All right, we're gonna do you want to do a bit of any intro, Josh? And
I can
am
introduce myself and do that kind of stuff if you like.
I mean, don't feel obligated to we won't need any credit card numbers or anything just yet. Um, if you could put them in chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, right after my
But
social security number.
I'll say there's if anyone's been looking on the forum, share. Let's share this one. On the forum, we can look up PasFmt. What's the most recent one?
Point 0.7. I think that's one of the first ones.
Okay. So and Ian was happy,
He was a fan for sure.
and obviously our we can't do Control D in the IDE uh, at the moment because our language understanding is a bit out of step with the actual language itself. Um, point 0.7.
Yeah, that was the one that I did a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay, no pictures though. Should we click on anything or just
I
and
mean, I'm happy to share myself if you would like.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just was a little tiny intro. So yes, please go for it.
Cool. Let's see if I can share my screen in a web browser. That might be a challenge. Or I'll have to download the app properly, which I don't really want to do. Is it because
Oh,
you're
is it? Are
sharing
you,
that I can't maybe? Oh no,
is
here
it
we go.
twisting your arm?
You're still sharing, so I can't share.
Oh, sorry about that. There we go.
Um, so, oh, right. I think you might be able to see that. Unsure. Paul, you've muted yourself, but if you could tell me,
Yes, yes, we can 100%.
and you can see my mouse,
Yes, thank you.
great. Anyway, uh, I'm Josh. I work for a company called Integrative in Melbourne. Um, I do a lot of things outside of work, but at work, one of the things that I do is help maintain a collection of Delphi tooling because we use Delphi a lot, and a lot of our software is written in Delphi, and so as a company of 90 something people, pretty much everybody writes Delphi most of the time. And so at that scale, we tend to suffer from the lack of tooling a little bit, or the, I guess, quality of the tooling. And because we use it all the time, we figure it would be best for, well, we kind of took it upon ourselves, say, to make some better tooling for the things that we wanted. And so it started many years ago with Sonar Delphi, which is a plugin for Sonar Cube, which it has, I'm not sure what you know of that kind of thing, but Sonar is like a code quality platform, and we wrote a plugin for it, which means we gave it the ability to understand Delphi and all of its things. Um, that's not strictly it's not my project at all, but I have contributed control flow graph analysis to that. Um, and then along came Delphi Lint, which is an IDE plugin to basically support using Sonar Delphi in the Delphi IDE. And that sort of cuts down the response time and the feedback loop that you have when you're developing. So you don't have to run a scan, which on our code base at work takes somewhere around 15 minutes, and then wait for it to upload and then go and have a look. You can just run the scan on a couple of files and see in the IDE as you're doing it. Um, and then sort of along came my idea that I took over many iterations. I really wanted to write a formatter for Delphi because I was particularly underwhelmed with the other formatters that were out there. And particularly for a company of the size that I work for, we wanted something that was quite opinionated and meant that anybody could write code and it would still look pretty much the same. And so a lot of the key drivers for that were like Google Java format, because we do have some Java code in our monolith. So with Google Java format as sort of a basis, I set out on designing this formatter for Delphi. And yes, it's written in Rust. Um, and we had a number of reasons for that. And I can answer questions about that later if anybody is interested. But
It's safe to say that here, Josh. You're in a safe space.
um, well, I think for me, like this was my first big project in Rust. And the guy who I was doing it with, his name is Zane. Um, he was a bit further along in his Rust journey, and we sort of embarked on this project together, knowing that I would be learning along the way, and yeah, so I think safe to say I know a lot more about Rust now. Um, and one of the other guys in my team designed our logo because he's prolific in that department for some reason, as well as being a programmer, of course. Um, anyway, so we sort of set out to create a command line application to format Delphi code really fast. Um, and I will show you our web demo. So one thing that is really handy about writing it in Rust is that with about 2 clicks of a button, you can make it compiled to WebAssembly. So this is the program running completely in the web browser, live live updates. Like if I'm changing the code, it happens as it happens. Um, so if I add more things to this type, it's not quite valid, but that doesn't really matter. And then it'll get long enough, and then it'll start wrapping it because that's what happens when it gets too long. But basically, the gist is we wanted a formatter that was not particularly configurable because we wanted to enforce a standard across our company that made sense and sort of we could use on a day to day and it wouldn't get in the way. Um, and so over many iterations, I was originally going to try and write it in Java, and then I kept making toy projects in various languages. And then when I finally got the time to do it at work, we decided on Rust, and I sort of just brain dumped all of these ideas that I'd been thinking about for somewhere in the realm of 18 months at that point. And I'll get to the design a little bit later, but it pretty much went down fully formed. And as if you've seen my posts on the forums, they have sort of been coming out in dribs and drabs. And that's goes along with our appetite for risk because, we have thousands of files of Delphi, and doing this means we're going to change every single one of them. So when there's when there's issues or there's anything, people have to typically look at the Git blame and go, well, it's not Josh because he just rewrote it, but he didn't actually write the code. um, so I can show you this in our current version. We have, what's that, eight forms of configuration, 8 things that you can configure. Um, some of these things were also in aid of being able to compile it to Linux as well as Windows. So we have things for encoding, we have things for line endings. Um, we also have like how much indentation you want, things like that. Um, and yeah, I think overall the product sort of speaks for itself. In you run it on your Delphi code, and your Delphi code will look like any other Delphi code that you've written if you run it over that too. So consistency is key. Um, uh, that's about all for the web demo. At
Have
this
you
point in time, does anybody have any questions?
have you had people? I mean, you're here in Australia, but have you had like people looking at it from all over the place?
Um, Short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer is I think the reception that we had mostly came from there's a seemingly a big couple of companies in Brazil that seem to use our tooling, and there's quite a few people in Germany that seem to are active on Delphi Praxis, for example. Um, and then yeah, some guys on ADUG that seem to like it, and I think we've got Ian Barker in our corner and a few people like that. So there hasn't been too much uptake in terms of the like no one's contributed as yet, but as I'll show you in a minute, it's very complicated, so I'm not overly disappointed. um, but you know, if people have issues, people raise issues, and at the moment I don't have any time to work on it at work, but when we do, we get to it.
And you've had an overwhelming group hug from all the Delphi people online uh, who
We're hug-
haven't had a bad word to say about.
yeah, we definitely stirred some feathers because of oh, we put the begin in the wrong place or we formatted the comments wrong or but sort of our stance on it is at the end of the day, if you don't like the tool, don't use it. But the tool is designed to be not configurable and so that everything looks the same. And if that's not the tool that you want, then this isn't the tool for you.
Well, I think that's actually the good side of the potential like negative feedback because some people were just like blah blah. Why would you write it in Rust? And
Oh, there was so many of those.
it's like, well, you want to write your own, write your own. You know, it's like it's like
Yeah.
it's a capable language. If it was good for the job, then anyway. But
And the other thing is I spent like pretty much somewhere in the realm of 6 straight months writing this thing. Like it is very, very complicated. And because of a lot of Delphi's legacy baggage and like, or even baggage all the way from Pascal, like there is so much stuff that makes this language complicated. And particularly for us, because we are not statically analyzing the the code, we're just trying to parse it into something that's workable for a formatter. We have to make some guesses and some assumptions here and there. Whereas our other tool, Sonar Delphi, it strives to have a perfect understanding of what is going on. So this tool is filled with some compromises for the sake of speed, some for the sake of like it's not completely correct, but it's only not correct in the cases that you would write if you're a masochist kind of thing. If you're writing sane Delphi, this is a good tool.
Does tr the tree sitter algorithm come into it at all? Because I'm trying to tree sitters in my head for some reason, and oh, I think it's about the syntactic highlighting um, link that I posted on the forum uh, pretty recently.
Um,
Do you think that's anything that could, is it relevant to this problem, or are they like
so
two separate things?
in Rust, there's a library called nom, which I think is probably quite similar.
A parser library?
Yeah, it's a parser combinator library.
Right.
Um, and the first version of it was written with that. But my colleague Zane, who I was writing this with, he is a he's an optimization nut, and nom wasn't fast enough for him, so we wrote it ourselves basically. Um, and I guess that can segue into a rough architecture of the thing. Basically, we worked out over many years that Delphi's compiler, it's very unique, and it does things in a very interesting way in that it manages to do everything in like maybe one or two passes of each file, and because of that it has some very interesting behavior, and that's really hard to model if you're trying to model it in a way that's like you lex it, you parse it, you analyze it, and that is problems that our other tools, Sonar Delphi, has to contend with. But for us, because we're not doing strictly that, we lex it, and then we sort of have an intermediate representation of roughly how we are able to format it, which is a concept that I called logical lines, which is ripped sort of from Clang format, which was another inspiration architecturally.
Mhm.
Um, so, sort of the architecture is sort of based on Clang, whereas the style of the formatting is based on Google Java format. That's sort of the, I guess, the family tree of this thing. Um, so yeah, we parse it, we lex it, which is the part that nom used to be for, but now it's written by us, and then we parse it into what we call logical lines, which is sort of the piece, a single piece of the code that you would logically think about being on a single line. So if it could fit on one line, it would go on one line. That kind of idea. Um, Again, there is a lot of nuance to that, and that some decisions were made in that, and it was very difficult to get all the way through that. But that's the rough gist. As we, and then after we have parsed it into these logical lines, we we basically do a tree search algorithm on the logical line, breaking at each token and going, is this the best penalty for this line?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's an optimization problem basing it on the least amount of penalty, and penalty includes things like breaks and like going over the column limit that we've set and things like that. Um, in addition to that, we coerce the output a little bit by inflicting a whole bunch of rules on what it can and can't look like. And so that's how it goes from being something more in the realm of the GExperts formatter, where it if it's over the line length, it just wraps and keeps continuing the tokens on the next line. It takes it from that to being more like Google Java format, which will go, if one of the arguments is broken of this function, it will put all of them on their own line. That sort of idea. Um, and then there was some optimizations to that tree search algorithm to make it basically faster. Because our first version that we released to the public, I think it was like zero point 0.3 or zero point 0.4 or something like that, had issues with really, really big lines and really big files, just because it wasn't it wasn't optimized enough to handle that sort of case. Um, the other thing that makes this particularly challenging is conditionally defined code. And it was sort of the one of the motivating factors of the other formatters that we didn't really like, in that they don't really handle conditional code very well. And that's also one of the key concepts that we took from Clang format, because Clang format, being a C and C++ formatter, obviously handles conditional code. Um, and so, particularly when you started conditionally defining code, that can exponentially, or it did exponentially increase the amount.
We're just dropping off a little tiny bit, Josh, where maybe you were saying the word
Of,
complexity or something. Pretty much exponentially it started.
if you're talking, Paul, I cannot hear
Okay, sorry, I was having some audio, but maybe it's just me.
you. The other, provided you can still hear me, the other sort of aspect of this is we broke it up into sort of three levels, like three packages. We have the like core formatting stuff that you give it a string, it gives you back a string of like input code, output code. And then we build a couple of layers on top of that to do like parallel file operations and like asynchronous stuff to basically make that part as fast as possible. And then we added a front end part, which is basically like the command line interface, and that's pretty much it. And the configuration stuff and that kind of thing. Um, and I think that's the overall gist. Is there anything else that anybody wanted particular insight into?
I got a bunch of things written down, but anyone else, please go ahead. All right, I'll start. Um,
This is deafening.
I wrote down coding style guide here, which you've basically talked about. Did you have internal discussions in your company about what you wanted, or they're just like, you decide, we'll take what you give us?
Um, we sort of went around a little bit, but originally our style guide was a Confluence page of, if this happens, you should do this. If this happens, you should do that, which obviously doesn't scale very well. Um, and I think when the project was like officially greenlit for me to do, I had been in the formatter trenches for months, like probably more than a year at that point in time. So there was a bit of like, I trust that you will make the right decision and talk to the right people when you need to. So most of the formatting decisions were made by me and my colleague Zane, and it there were some things that we wanted to like we polled some of the other people in the company, some of the more influential people, to see what style they preferred, but at the end of the day we kind of came up with a consistent style, like vibe, based on the Google Java format one, and basically tried to fit all of our other decisions into that sort of idea. And if I go
I,
to
I think
GitHub,
you told us. Do you mind saying what company it is?
It's called Integrative. It looks like this. Um, if I
I'll just also say I set an alarm to go off at the end of this hour, just like so I can remind you
yeah, I
about your time
prepared
if
for that.
necessary.
Don't worry about that.
Um, and I'll, as a committee member for ADUG, as is Jeff, Jeff's the president. I'll say if IntegraDev wants to talk to, you know, ADUG sometime about whether they've used Delphi in the past, maybe if they're using it begrudgingly or moving away from or any of that stuff, we'd still like to hear anyone who wants to talk about it. That would be great to
Um, I believe in the past, some people from my company have gone to the symposiums.
it does ring a bit of a bell, IntegraDev.
It could have been called Object Mastery at that time.
Okay. But yeah, like one of the things that people really like is hearing those like practical and real world feedback about actual companies. And so yeah, it's something we're kind of actively looking for
Um,
or trying to encourage, you know. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
no, that's all right. I was looking for something anyway. Uh, I wonder if they've removed it, but we sort of. Ah, here we go. It's on the wiki. One of the key sort of principles that we adopted from Google Java format is this thing called the rectangle rule. And sort of you can read this page if you like, but the gist of it is that any sort of logical block of code you should be able to put, like expression for example, you should be able to put in a rectangle, and no other rectangles should intersect with that rectangle. And so you like you nest all of these rectangles and basically make it so that they don't overlap. And that's sort of, and with a couple of key exclusions like semicolon, for example. Um, so this sort of these sort of examples are quite illustrative in that they've just broken in the middle of an argument list, and then you've got the outer thing that interacts with the inner thing, and then you can see in the formatted example that all of the arguments to this function are in a box, and then all of the subsequent method chains are in their own box, and then each of the arguments to those are in their own box. And it's there could be a diagram somewhere, but possibly not. But basically, the idea, as it says, uh, each subtree gets its own bounding rectangle containing all of that subtree's text and none of any other subtrees. So that was sort of the overarching rule that we tried to follow as best we could.
I,
And
I like it.
we like we for the longest time we were sort of going, oh, this formatting feels good, this formatting feels good, we'll use these kind of rules. And we were kind of skirting around the fact that we wanted to use the rectangle rule, and so we did make some uninformed decisions in development that didn't follow this rule. But after we decided that we do want to follow the rectangle rule because it means that any such decision is very simple, and it also simplified the code, which was nice. Even though it's still extremely complicated, it simplified it a little bit. Um,
Who
and
was the one who knew that this thing existed?
um, I don't remember. I think I had read the Google Java format docs and come across it. Maybe me and my colleague Zane probably independently saw it, and because we used Google Java format already for our Java code, so we were all familiar with how Java looks when it's formatted with this tool. Um,
Okay. Okay.
and then, yeah, I guess we kind of looked at it, and as we were going through the earlier stages of writing PAS format, we're like, yeah, we like some of the ideas that this thing brings, but we weren't sure about all of them. And then I don't know, somewhere in development, we decided, yes, we follow the rectangle rule, and we will inform our decisions based on that. And then the decisions basically turn into how do we define the rectangles for this syntactic structure? And so it's changing the problem a little bit, but typically it's easier to do so. So,
Yeah. This
and
this
transforming the problem is, a common way to solve any problem, really.
I think this is one of the advantages of like cross-pollination. Embarcadero have come up with a website for it with a, like they've trained an AI on sort of like Delphi related stuff and come up with a very strangely small chat box where you can ask questions. It's kind of experimental thing, but and that's good and all. But also at the same time, I thought, like, having the influence of other languages may also like help us as well as um well, may just help us anyway. Full stop.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we just wanted our Delphi code to look the same everywhere. And we've now achieved that. And so we format our several thousand files with PAS format all the time. It runs in our CI checks, it runs on developers' machines, it runs everywhere. Um,
How nervous do you feel about, I mean, for example, we've just had the ternary operator coming into Delphi 13.
yeah.
How nervous do you feel about future language changes?
Um,
Not that I'm saying they come rolling along like like a production line.
uh, I'm not sure. I think in if in my opinion, I think some of the language features that we've gotten recently have been they feel a bit tacked on and not very integrated. Because the like ternary operator basically is just, oh, we want the if structure to be an expression. And so coming from a language like Rust, where like I learned Delphi first, but with the perspective of Rust, everything is an expression. So you can assign anything to anything. Like you can assign a while loop to a variable if you want, and if it returns something that's useful. And then, yeah, seeing Delphi with its like Pascal standard um, ideals, and then getting things that are a bit like they work, sure, but yeah, they feel a little tacked on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a good step for us to like I mean, we've got a very conservative user base, I suspect, right? And the idea of like introducing the idea of like expressions as values is a good thing, in my opinion. Um, and we have to get there slowly. We've got another 90 years to develop the language. Um, so you you I don't want to take away from your idea of like your amount of time to spend with us. Okay.
Yep.
It'd be great if we could kind of see some sort of an overview of the code and that sort of thing, if you feel that is a doable thing, or we could potentially like do that some other time. Um, but I also wanted to ask you about the WebAssembly. Um, like, what is the actual compiler output that then becomes, like viewable as what seems like a web page or however it. I don't have any experience with WebAssembly, but we're interested in it.
Um, okay. I don't have it checked out because I as a point of separation, don't check out my work stuff at home, but I have the web GitHub thing. Um, but the rough gist is uh, there's a cargo, which is the tool chain for Rust.
Yeah. Yeah, like the
Package manager, something like that.
compiler and package manager and build system and
Yeah, the everything for Rust has an extension called WASMPack, and that basically just like when you compile the code, it will output as a .wasm file, and that's something that you can then load from JavaScript. Let's see if I can find that. Uh,
do you then also write the TypeScript sort of like file, or does that kind of come along with it as a like a in a default sort of way?
so this is the TypeScript file for the web page that you see when you go to the web demo. And it, in terms of like Delphi language, you can almost think of WASM as like a DLL for a website, in that you declare like a foreign function interface kind of deal.
Okay.
Um, so that's not this one. Somewhere in here is the
Does
functions that are in Rust. Maybe I'll show you the Rust side. That might be
d
easier.
does the WASM sort of come along with kind of like graphical set out, or is it more like a ASCII graphics on the web kind of
So
situation?
the WASM part is purely just the application, the the string to string conversion of not formatted code to formatted code.
Oh, okay. Right.
Um, so this file that I'm looking at now is the wrapper for the WebAssembly. Sorry, the interface to the WebAssembly that you load in JavaScript. So these are the things that are exposed from that module. So we have format, which obviously does string to string stuff. And then there's a couple of other things for settings and yeah, that's about it. So it's basically settings and format.
So
And then in the JavaScript, it interfaces with these functions, and the JavaScript itself is like where all of the editor is, and the the design
okay.
and the layout and the CSS and all that sort of stuff.
Okay. Okay. So would it be fair to say there's kind of a JavaScript or TypeScript application, then the Rust provides the engine, the WASM provides the engine for
Yeah,
to plug into it.
yeah. And so you could almost see this as a different front end to. So I talked earlier about the different sort of layers we have. We have like our core stuff and then our orchestrator and our front end. Our orchestrator doesn't really come into this because it's a single file in and out. So it's basically a front end that directly drags in the core and just exposes some functions for JavaScript to use.
And would you say, is that reflect anything like a MBC or all those other different acronyms? Is any of that kind of apply to in any way to the way you've set out your Rust uh, code,
Oh,
or is
was
that the
that
wrong way?
MVC, like model view
Yeah,
controller?
that's MBVMM,
Yeah.
whatever, whatever.
Um, I wouldn't say we actively thought about it, but myself and my colleague Zane are fairly like architecturally minded, so it wouldn't be a surprise if we just fell into it.
But
Um,
you were able to put like basically use your part of your code as is, under a different, the WASM compiler to
Yeah,
create
pretty
something
much.
useful, right?
It was really funny. My colleague is the one who made this web demo work and has updated it since we put it out the first time. But he he had been thinking about it for ages and was like, oh, I'm going to do the web demo today. And about 20 minutes later, he turned around and went, here it is.
That's nice.
Um, Obviously, the styling and stuff took a little bit longer, but the as far as compiling the program to WASM, it was pretty much as simple as adding the components that it needed and making the interface something sane, which is what
Yep.
I was showing you before.
Yep.
And that was about it. And then he had like a really ugly two text box web page, but it worked.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then, and then we dragged in some extra stuff to get the like Monaco editor, which is like VS Code in the web browser kind of thing.
But that was basically a JavaScript problem from that point onwards.
Correct. Yeah,
Right.
we
Yeah.
didn't really change much at all, if anything, in the Rust because it was
Well,
sort of designed from the beginning to be modular and composable.
well, if I was a better moderator, there'd be like a round of applause right about here. If I had any sort of sound equipment or any skills in that area whatsoever, and a little explosion of confetti.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Nice.
Um, and yeah, so that is the kind of the web demo. I think while might be a little bit scary to some in that they're putting their code on the internet, if they can take that a step back and go, yes, this is running locally, it's not being sent anywhere, then I think it's quite a good sort of introduction that people can have to our formatter without having to download it or install it or put it on your path or anything like that.
Okay, so that is like physically just running in your computer's memory.
Yep, it's
Wow.
completely
Okay.
local.
Oh, when I summarize this, I will make a point to point that out to people.
But yeah, obviously you need the internet connection to get to the web demo, but once you're there, it doesn't talk anymore. And I show you in the network stuff, like I'm changing the code and it's not making any web requests. And then I can change the version and it will make a request to download the other version. But after that, it's not making any requests.
Yeah.
And here you go. So you can see that it when it got the new version, it downloaded the WASM sort of binary file, and then it downloaded the JavaScript to load it. Um, and yeah, it's just like a binary thing that the web can read.
Mm, fantastic. Um, so I don't know how much time we have left with you.
I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay, no, great. I mean, I'm sure we'd also like to hear about the Sonar Cube. Is it Sonar Cube or is it Sonar?
Sonar Cube is the platform. Sonar Delphi is the plugin.
Okay, and linting and that sort of thing. That'd be a great discussion at any time. But and we probably don't really have time to talk about the structure of your code base.
I can give you a rough tour if you like.
So there's like it's broken down into kind of steps of parsing, tokenizing, and parsing, and
Yep.
hang on, what is it? Lexing, parsing. Sorry if I've got that.
Yeah, I can run through that, I reckon. Um, so that was the other thing that we're quite driven. we're driven by test-driven development quite often. So pretty much everything in this code base is tested in theory. Um, so all of the different structures in Delphi code, they're all tested quite heavily in this, and so there are thousands of lines of tests
Like,
that
oh,
that take a long time. Well, they don't take long to run, but they take a long time to compile because they all get bundled in.
my mouth was about to ask you, are you using D-Unit X? And then I like, then I caught myself. I don't
And
say
then
something that stupid. It's
you
Rust. So
um
lucky I didn't say it.
okay, so here is sort of the main meat of the program. And this is an elaborate builder pattern. Um, but it sort of gives you an idea as to the order of operations that things happen in. So we have Alexa, so you it takes the string and gives you back tokens. We have a parser, which converts the tokens into logical lines, which are the structure that I was talking about earlier, which is basically just a list of tokens that you would hypothetically consider to be on a single line. So, like a single function call, for example. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's the gist.
At that stage, would it be like from the word function all the way to like the final um, semicolon
Semicolon.
uh,
Yeah, kind of thing. And
before you
then
start? Yep.
a new line would be like the next line would be begin, for example.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant from the first from the first word to the very last semicolon of the function, but I see. I
So
see.
no, because we typically like the reasoning is because we typically think of there's like a function header and then we
Yep.
have begin and then we have end and those are different lines and they would never
Gotcha,
go in.
gotcha.
So we've split them up into different lines.
Yep, yep.
Um, and then because we don't do static analysis, we have this concept of consolidators, which basically modifies the tokens after the fact. And the reason we do this is because we don't know if things are generics or not until after we've done a bit of work. Um, and so, can I type in here? I can. So the what's the
In
main?
in particular for like generics that are not using the angle, you know,
So something like this. I can't remember our exact example that is just something that we're
uh,
never going to be able to handle. Um, I guess yeah, this is in brackets, say. So I don't think this is exactly right, but
yeah, we get the idea. Yeah.
you can't tell if this is generics or it's two arguments. Like you, I think you can in this case, but there's an example like this where in the Delphi parser, uh, you can change it based on the type of one of the identifiers. It will change whether it's generics or arguments. And it doesn't make any sense when you think about it in the way of separating lexing and parsing. So, by that logic, we assert that the Delphi compiler does lexing and parsing and all of its processing all at the same time. Um,
Does it does
moving
it
on.
does it matter to your formatter that sometimes we don't have to put in the angle brackets for a generic, or is that just kind of then becomes a normal function and it doesn't matter?
Yeah, the latter.
Right.
After that, we have ignorers, uh, for lack of a better word, but they're basically we have a comment that allows you to turn off the formatter and turn it back on again. That's what handles that. And we also explicitly ignore inline assembly because that's really hard too. And we didn't want to do that at that point in time, so we don't support it. And we document that. And so this basically just, if it sees inline assembly, it just ignores it. And then now we're into the fun stuff, the actual rules for the formatting. Um, we break it up into sort of bits. We have a token spacing rule, which basically puts like spaces after commas and removes spaces before semicolons and removes spaces before brackets and that sort of stuff. So it's a very sort of niche window of formatting rules. Um, we also have the newest edition, which is the newest two editions, which are the lowercase keywords formatter, which was in 0.7. So that just takes all of the keywords and lowercases them. And that's one of the other consolidation steps that we do. Based on the structure of the code, we have a much better understanding as to whether or not things are keywords or identifiers. And that's also a really hard problem because some keywords can be identifiers depending on where they are. Um, and again, that's another, not necessarily a Delphi specific thing, but Delphi has a lot of them. Um, we have a formatter for comments.
So it's 11. Well, it's 11 o'clock now. If
Yeah,
you,
I'll get through this and then I'll be done.
yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure
Jeff
that
is Jeff is feeling your pain because he's in Bendigo, is that right?
yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll be quick, I promise.
We no,
Uh,
no, it's not to get rid of you. He's just like he feels for you. He sympathizes. Um, we have tortured him to much later extents than this in the past, and he has been scarred and still suffers from the bruises.
um, where was I? This one. The other thing that we have a distinction of is we have file formatters and we have line formatters. Um, file formatters basically process all the tokens all at the same time, whereas line formatters format each logical line one at a time. And so, based on your granularity, you can make rules based on different things. And then this one here, the optimizing line formatter uh, was kind of stolen from Clang format, and this is kind of the rest of the owl kind of formatter.
Sure.
Um, and so this is the thing that does all of the laying out of all of the lines and wrapping them and all of that kind of stuff. And it does extra work for things like anonymous procedures, um, conditional directives, all of this kind of stuff. But most of the conditional stuff, that's actually a good point. Most of the conditional stuff is sort of stripped out when we parse it into the lines. And so we basically create multiple lines for each of the versions of the line that you have with conditional code. So after the parser, all of the lines should be valid without any conditional code. At least that's the theory. Um, and then after we've laid out all of the lines, we stuff it all back into a string, and that's that. Any other last questions before I head off?
So do you introduce blank lines into the? I'm just looking on the web demo, and
So blank lines, I believe, won't be added, but if you have two, it will keep two, and if you have more than two, it'll change it to two.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. Um, as
No
a
worries.
um, so the meeting gets recorded, and I try and uh, publish it, and I have fallen so far behind. But are you okay with this if we publishing this section that you've presented to
Yeah,
us? Very-
that's fine with me.
That's fantastic. That's great. Um, no, it's been really great to get to anybody. Any questions quickly before Josh goes to actually get some sleep or do what he really wanted to be doing, which might be
Oh,
more programming?
no, one of my other external things is I do a lot of musical theater stuff. So I was doing that tonight, which is why I got home at 10.
Uh,
So I will be going to bed.
so I don't understand. You're saying you have a life? How,
Sometimes.
how does that work? And does PasFormat does one file at a time? Is that it doesn't look any? I mean, I don't know why it would want to look any further, but
Um, no. So, e- sorry, yes, it does one file at a time.
yep.
And somewhere in here, this is the main loop. It just gets parallelized at the file level.
Oh, okay,
But other than that, no. It just has a thread for each file, basically.
okay. You did mention there was some sort of async processing going on there. Is that got to do with this parallelism, or is that different again?
I might have lied. I think we started out with async, but now it's just parallel threads.
Okay,
I think we got rid of the async code in the end.
no problem. Um, Potentially, if you're interested to do so, I suspect the UK group, whose lunchtime meetings are round about this sort of time, uh, might be interested to talk. Is it like 2 p.m. there, Ian? Something like that? I'm surprising Ian because he's got his mic off. But um, I just mention it if you may or may not be potentially interested. They've got
Possible.
quite a big group over there, and they meet mostly Mondays and for sort of 5 hours at a time in general,
Wow, that
starting
sounds
from starting from lunchtime and going till well, their 5 p.m. turns out to be like 1 a.m. in the morning for me.
anyway. I might
And
wrap up there, but
absolutely, and I'll remind everybody that Code Rage starts in 4 hours, day 7, I guess. But that was fantastic. It was incredibly detailed. So many components in there. Really interesting, Josh. Thank you.
Thanks,
it's
Josh.
when you say it's detailed, that's just the service level.
No, I mean there were look here is
There's a lot of things. Yep.
these are my notes, and
Yep.
there's a little bit on the back. But
Well,
yeah, I'll also try and write a bit of a summary, and maybe I don't know if you want to see either of them or both of them before I post them. That'd be perfectly fine, no problem.
couldn't hurt to have a read.
Yeah, yeah. You could go. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. It'd be like I'm back in high school again. Anyway, we
Mm,
won't keep you. Thank you so much for joining.
No worries. I hope everybody has a good night. See you later.
Thank
See you,
you,
Josh.
Josh. Cheers.